Well, friends, welcome to our first Bible study session, and we are focusing on the book of Job. The book of Job teaches us how to walk with God through suffering and how pastoral theology should respond to human pain. The title I've given to this Bible study session is Pilgrimaging the Book of Job. It is indeed a pilgrimage. A pilgrimage is an adventurous journey. A pilgrimage should produce some surprises. And indeed, the book of Job is a theological pilgrimage. It is full of surprises. It does not fit very well in the Jewish theology dominated by the cause and effect laws. And what does the cause and effect laws say? The cause and effect laws say there is a cause for everything. For instance, in the Jewish tradition, if somebody is seen suffering, then the interpretation is that this person or that person should have done A, B, C to be suffering. And to be precise, for someone to be suffering, it was seen as a punishment for sinning from Yahweh or from God. And for somebody to be rich or to be prosperous or to be seen joyous or happy, that is a reward. That means this person has done something which pleases Yahweh or God. Therefore, whatever we are seeing him enjoying or her enjoying is a blessing from God. So suffering in the Jewish cause and law effect, suffering was equal to sin. And enjoying life and blessings was equal to being righteous before God. So the cause and law effects say, for every transgression there has to be a corresponding consequence. For every transgression there has to be a corresponding consequence. But before we get into finer details about the teachings or what we can learn from the book of Job, I will spend some time trying to dig deep the theological background, the authorship and stuff. And let's talk a little bit about the authorship of the book of Job. The book of Job is very silent when it comes to the authorship. And one of the most striking features of the book of Job is that the text or the book never identifies its author. Unlike the prophetic books like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos, and others, where the prophet is clearly named, Job offers no superscription, no autobiographical claim, and no editorial attribution. But I want to make it very clear. Theologically, this silence is not accidental. It has some theological significance. Let's talk about the literary observation in as far as authorship is concerned. No internal claim of authorship in the book of Job. There is no superscription. Many Old Testament books begin with identifying markers. For instance, the word of the Lord that came to so and so, the word of the Lord that came, for instance, to Jeremiah, the vision of God to Amos. In the New Testament, we have Paul, an apostle. So this is a superscription. These are pointers, at least, to us as to who might have authored those books. But the book of Job simply begins like, there was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. Job chapter 1 verse 1. The book introduces Job and not the writer. I want to make this clear. The book introduces Job and not the writer. So the writer remains anonymous. But why is anonymous important in this case? Let's reflect a little bit about anonymous wisdom tradition. The book of Job belongs to the wisdom tradition alongside the book of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, wisdom, and the wisdom literature often emphasizes on universal truth over prophetic personality. The focus is not on the messenger, but on the message. And this is very important. The focus in the book of Job, anonymity in the book of Job, forces us to focus on the message of the book and not really on the message, on the messenger. It has some interesting theological insights. The anonymity shifts attention from human authority to divine revelation. What are the theological implications of anonymity? The message transcends personality. Because there is no author named, the book does not rest on apostolic authority. It does not depend on prophetic credentials. It stands on the power of its theological argument. The absence of authorship removes human prestige and forces the reader to confront three very important themes. Number one, the problem of suffering. Number two, the sovereignty of God. And thirdly, the limits of human wisdom. Why is this important? The universal nature of suffering is magnified in the book of Job simply because the author is anonymous. The universal nature of suffering. Job is not presented as an Israelite king. Job is not presented as a prophet. Job is not presented as a priest in the Levitical sense. He is introduced simply as a man. If I want to be gender sensitive, he is simply introduced as a human being or as a person. This universal framing suggests quite a lot of things, but I would want to talk about the fact that the book addresses all humanity. Suffering is not confined to covenant Israel. Anonymity strengthens the universal theological scope. The focus is on God and not on the writer. The narrative quickly shifts to heavenly courts, the dialogue between God and Satan, the divine speeches from the whirlwind. Now, the absence of the author allows us to reflect and center our attention to God's central voice, reflected in Job chapters 38 to 41. These are the divine speeches. They dominate the theological climax of the book of Job. But scholars would come up with some kind of hypothesis to try and figure out, try and investigate who might have been the author to this book, who might have written the book. There is a traditional speculation, but it's not certain. Throughout history, some have suggested possible authors. The traditional speculation suggests that the book of Job might have been written by Moses. Why? Because or due to its patriarchal setting. Then some suggest that the book might have been written by Solomon due to its wisdom style of writing. The book, some suggested that the book might have been written by one of the friends, Elihu, who is an internal narrator to the whole story. However, there is no textual evidence to support all these claims. Scripture itself makes no attribution. So, the author or the writer of the book remains anonymous. But what do we learn? What's the teaching point from this anonymity? Where Scripture is silent, we must not be dogmatic. But why is it theologically important to maintain the anonymity of the book, of the author? Number one, divine inspiration does not require human identification. According to 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 16, all scripture is given by inspiration of God. Authority comes from divine inspiration, not from a named author. Number two, the book of Job models theological humility. Job teaches us that humans lack full understanding. God's wisdom surpasses human reasoning. The unknown authorship mirrors the book's theme. Just as Job does not know the heavenly discussion, we do not know the earthly writer. The structure reinforces the theology. Number four, let's talk about the literary theological function of the unknown author. The book becomes timeless. That's very important. The book becomes timeless. Because the author is unknown, the book is not anchored to a specific political reign. It is not tied to a historical crisis like the exile. It transcends one era. This strengthens its application across all the generations. Then, secondly, the objectivity of the debate. The dialogue in the book of Job is between quite a number of people: Job himself, Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar, and Elihu. All these figures are presented almost as a theological drama or actors. An unnamed narrator gives the work a wisdom saga character rather than a prophetic autobiography. Now, looking at the book of Job, the emphasis should be on that the power of the scripture does not depend on celebrity. Truth does not require personal branding. God often hides the vessel to magnify the message. So friends, what can we conclude from the authorship of the book of Job. We conclude in several points, but to mention just a few. Where there is no reference in the book of Job pointing to its author, this anonymity highlights divine sovereignty, universalizes the message of suffering, emphasizes theology over personality, reinforces the humility theme of the book, demonstrates that Scripture's authority is rooted in God, not human identity. The silence about the author is not a weakness. It is a theological design. And I would want to repeat the silence about the author is not a weakness or a mistake. It is a theological design. So this is what we can talk. This is our understanding about the book of Job, and this is very, very important. Let's meet again in the next session where we talk about the cultural setting of the book and see how it goes. God bless you.